All right, let's get right into it. There is a huge story playing out in Hollywood, and believe me, it is not on a movie screen. No, it's happening in our living rooms. You know, award shows, those nights that used to be the absolute peak of glitz and glam, well, their audiences are disappearing fast. We're going to unpack one really pointed theory about why millions of people are just changing the channel and what that could mean for, well, for all of Hollywood.
So to really get a sense of the scale here, let's just hop in a time machine and go back to 2020. Not that long ago, right? That year, the Golden Globes pulled in 18.3 million viewers. I mean, think about that number. That's a massive audience. It was a genuine cultural event, something you'd actually talk about at work the next day. So burn that number into your brain, 18.3 million.
Okay, now, fast forward to this year. The same show, the Golden Globes, got just 8.6 million viewers. Just let that sink in for a second. We are not talking about a little dip here or a slight market correction. This is a nosedive, a catastrophic collapse, more than half the audience, poof, gone. You know, that's not just a trend. That feels like a message from the public. And the huge flashing question is, why?
So to try and figure this out, we've broken this explainer down into 5 parts. First, we'll look at the hard numbers in ratings and freefall. Then we'll get into the main theory with the alienation argument. After that, we'll zoom in on a specific example in a case study in politics. Then we'll see how this whole thing might be spreading in The Audience Tunes Out. And finally, we'll ask what comes next in Hollywood's new rulebook.
All right, so let's start with the cold, hard data, because the numbers tell a story of a consistent, really undeniable slide that's about way more than just one-off year or, a host nobody liked. And look, this wasn't a sudden cliff dive. It's more like a slow, steady leak. You can see it right here. It's been happening year after year after year, from nearly 10 million a couple of years back down to 9.27, now to 8.66. It's this constant downward slope that suggests something more fundamental is broken, not just that one show is kind of boring. Every single year, more and more people are actively deciding, you know what, I'm going to watch literally anything else.
And when you put the 2020 number right next to this year's, wow, the picture is just staggering. The audience has been sliced by more than half in only 6 years. Now, I know what you're thinking. Well, what about streaming? People watch things differently now. And that's true, but streaming was definitely a thing 6 years ago, too. The data seems to be pointing to something else, something more specific, a real shift in how the public sees these events, and maybe the people at the center of them. So what is that something?
Well, that takes us from the what, the numbers, to the why. The ratings, you could say, are the symptom. So what's the proposed disease? The argument we're digging into today is this idea of a deep and growing sense of alienation between the stars on that stage and the audience watching at home.
This quote, it doesn't pull any punches, does it? It gets right to the absolute core of the perspective we're looking at. It frames the whole problem not as, the show wasn't entertaining enough, but as a cultural and emotional chasm. The idea here is that audiences feel like they're being looked down on, and because of that, they're just walking away. That's a powerful claim because it suggests this whole thing has gotten personal.
So let's just spell this out so we're all on the same page. The alienation argument is this theory that the decline in viewership isn't passive, it's an active choice, a rejection. It suggests that a huge chunk of the audience feels that the political commentary coming from celebrities feels, well, preachy, condescending, and maybe worst of all, just completely out of touch with the reality of their own lives.
Okay, so that all might sound a bit abstract. So let's ground it in a real-world example that critics of Hollywood often bring up. And listen, the point here isn't to agree or disagree with the politics. The point is to understand how the delivery of a celebrity's message can become a lightning rod for this exact feeling of alienation.
So here we have a statement from actor Mark Ruffalo. He's speaking with a ton of conviction about a really complex geopolitical situation. Now, the substance of his claim, whether it's right or wrong, is only part of the story. For the alienation argument, it's not just what he said, but how he said it that matters so much.
So let's break down the pushback. First, there is the feeling that, hey, maybe an actor isn't the most qualified person to be giving expert geopolitical analysis. Second, a lot of people challenge his statements on a factual basis, which hurts credibility. But here's the absolute key part. The delivery was seen as abrasive, as antagonistic. It didn't feel like an invitation to a discussion, it felt like a lecture from a place of moral superiority. And that, the argument goes, is what does the real damage. It doesn't win anyone over, it just shoves away anyone who doesn't already 100% agree.
And here's where it gets really serious for Hollywood. This isn't just about a 3-hour TV special anymore.
The theory is that this feeling of alienation is now spilling over. It's starting to affect Hollywood's main business, actually getting us to go to the movies. That bank of goodwill, it's argued, is starting to run really, really low.
This comparison really paints a picture of a key distinction critics are making. You know, back in the day when celebrities got behind a cause, it was often something almost everyone could support. Think about things like AIDS research, or fighting breast cancer, or mothers against drunk driving. These were unifying issues. The argument today is that so much of celebrity activism has jumped into highly controversial, partisan political fights, causes that by their very nature drive a wedge between people. And that shift is seen as a huge reason why audiences are just tired.
And right here is where it starts to hit the bottom line. The theory goes that audiences aren't really separating the artist from the art anymore. If a viewer feels talked down to by a star's public persona, they're just less likely to want to see that star's new movie. The films themselves start to get viewed with suspicion, not as simple entertainment, but as potential vehicles for what some see as propaganda. And let's be honest, nobody wants to pay $20 for a movie ticket just to get a lecture.
So, if this theory is even partly true, what in the world does that mean for the future? Who actually succeeds in this new landscape where the old rules of being a celebrity seem to be completely changing? Well, that brings us to our final section, the idea that a whole new kind of movie star is on the rise.
What we might be seeing is the Hollywood hierarchy getting flipped completely on its head. For decades, you had the activist stars, right? People like Sean Penn or Jane Fonda. They were loud, often controversial, but they were seen as the exception to the rule. Most stars kind of kept their politics to themselves. The argument now is that the roles have totally reversed. In a world where so many celebrities are so publicly political, the new exception, the person who really stands out, is the one who says nothing at all.
And this brings us to some very specific, very famous examples. Why are actors like Timothée Chalamet and Chris Pratt some of the biggest, most bankable stars on the planet right now? Well, according to this perspective, a huge part of their appeal is about what they don't do. They don't jump on social media to weigh in on every single controversy. They just do their jobs. They focus on the craft, and that lets audiences from all over the political map just enjoy the movie without feeling pushed away. In this climate, their silence has become a kind of superpower.
And that's the question we're left with. In a world that feels more divided than ever, has the basic math of being a celebrity changed for good? For an industry that is built on appealing to as many people as possible, this entire analysis suggests that the safest path forward might not be having the loudest opinion, but maybe, just maybe, having the quietest one. It's a heck of a dilemma, and it makes you wonder what being a movie star is even going to mean in the years to come.